With such a dramatic shift in the market taking place over the last several weeks, James decides to put Team Sweasey to the test by pulling some predictions out of Hal.
Who knows? I'm a very conservative person. I never would have said, oh yeah, that house will be worth 20% more in 5 years. But they are. I mean, I just get surprised all the time.
JT.
Rents are just like housing prices. They have gone up over time. So the moral of the story is buy a house as soon as you can.
And Jay.
There might be 300 properties on the market for sale, but they're all going to close in 10 days. So you've got 3 cycles within another month. So there's 900 properties. The traditional market is 1,150 properties. So we're transacting an average amount of homes. There's just no inventory on the market at the time people are looking. It's just happening so fast, you're missing it.
It's the 6-month crystal ball real estate forecast. Let's get into what the future holds. Or at least some educated guesses, with the SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast. Here's host, James Bueno.
Hello, Hal.
Hello, James.
JT is here.
Glad to be back.
And Mr. JP from Keller Williams.
James, good to see you.
And of course, I am James, Hal's right-hand marketing guy. I want you guys to get out your crystal balls and tell me some things for the future. In your opinion, what's going on at third and fourth quarter? What's going to happen? What should we expect?
What should we expect in the third and fourth quarter? If you would have asked me this last year, I would have said probably more of the same. I didn't see any reason things might change. We didn't know what was going to happen to interest rates. If you would have asked me, hey, are we going to see prices bump up 10, 15%, 20% maybe in the first quarter of this year, 2022, I would have said probably not going to happen. And if you would have asked me, hey, are mortgage rates going to go from like 3% to 5 or 5.5 to 6%, I would have said probably not going to happen. So my answer is I have no clue.
That's a great answer.
It's honest.
That's a great,
yeah,
true.
So I would say, though, if I were to be a gambling person or whatever, that mortgage rates are probably going to be higher in the next 5 to 6 months. I don't think that's going to change. If I were to guess, and this is just a guess.
What would you say they're going to be?
Well, I'm going to steal some information because I've been coaching and studying with the most prolific real estate trainer for my 30 years plus his 10. So he's been doing it 40 years. And he thought that very likely we could, by the end of the year, see 7.5% mortgage rates, which we haven't seen since probably the 90s. Yeah, 2000s, early 2000s. So which was kind of normal.
You bet.
Yeah. So again, contextually, it seems like, you're kidding me. Historically, it's just like, okay, we're almost to average if we get to 7.5 or 8%. That could slow our demand down. And at some point, like when we do our little market updates this past month, we had about 250 homes. Let me think. We had way more homes going into escrow than new homes coming on the market. So we still have demand outstripping supply, but it's not as extreme. So the reason the prices went up so strong in the first quarter is we probably had 10 buyers for every house. We talk about this a lot. We'd have 30 to 70 showings in a weekend on a house. And now we might have a handful of showings the way it used to be. And if I'm a seller, I'm going to go, if you get an offer, be happy, and let's be willing to work with a buyer. A little give and take, which we haven't had to do. So that's my 2 cents.
Is this going to fix our shortage
of available houses to purchase?
Yes.
It could definitely, it'll likely increase the inventory to a more reasonable level. It's already started just a little bit. So we're 10% up in terms of inventory at the beginning of June versus a year ago. So 10% more homes, which is 26 in the county. That's not very many.
Right.
Yeah. So that doesn't take many people just moving to town or wanting to buy a house to make up the difference. So it doesn't change the shortage at all, and we're not going to build houses fast enough, but it will slow down the pace of sales, which we've already seen.
Something that's interesting about the pace of sales, and I had a conversation earlier this morning with some of my top producing agents down in Pismo, and that is that a lot of them, more than 45% of the homes in San Luis County are non-owner occupied. And when you're on the coast, a lot of them are second, sometimes even third homes for people.
Yes.
Well, the money that they're using to buy that, they're liquidating from their portfolio, their stock portfolio. And their stock portfolio has taken such a beating that now they're they're no longer the buyers that we used to see. They're like backing away, or they're not coming in with the overpriced offer that they used to. They're having to reach, those that are currently in escrow are having to reach to find funds now. So I think those buyers are going to actually dry up a little bit in Q3. I don't know about Q4, but I'm already seeing it. So that might lay way to people that want to buy a home to live in, because that's our biggest problem. People that work and live here want to buy a home to live in, and they're being outbid by people that are vacationing here.
Yeah.
Or retiring here, or this is their second home.
It's decreased the demand from crazy to more normal. So we don't have these huge jumps in prices, right? Which we all knew was unsustainable.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, 27% appreciation year over year.
Yeah.
No, like 7's a good solid number. When I see 27, I freak out a little bit. Like, oh my gosh, what's next?
Yeah.
I talked on the last podcast the difference between a speculator and an investor. And an investor, by definition, is long-term and goal-oriented. So what happens as an investor, which is what I hold myself to be, I don't really care what happens in the next 6 months. Let's say I bought a house recently for $800,000 and I wake up in 6 months and it's worth $700,000. Should I care? I mean, I probably will because my emotions will get the best of me. But should I care?
No. Do you care that your car is worth less than what you paid for it?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
My spouse loves the house, and she gets to decorate it the way she wants to decorate it. It's more than an investment in a house. It's our home. We live there. We're secure there. We're in the neighborhood we want for the schools that we wanted for our children. So I don't really care. Now, if I'm looking to buy right now, then I'd probably be more interested in what's going on with the market, right? Mm-hmm. And wish I could buy a crystal ball and tell me what to do. But the only thing I know to do from history is to buy a stinking house as fast as I can.
Well, yeah, and obviously I won't be right because last year I was probably wrong 50% of the time. But if rates go from 5.5 now to 6, maybe they're closer to 6 today. It changes so fast. At the end of the year, if this gentleman Mike Ferry is right, then it's 7.5%. Okay, am I more concerned with what the dollar value of my house is, even though I'm not going to sell it, or am I more concerned with my payment? And I'd much rather be at 6 than 7.5. Okay, and if the market slows down enough, you know what they're going to stop doing is they'll stop raising the rates, which is what they're trying to get to. So if you can weather the bumps or whatever, and they're not even bumps because you know what your payment is, I wouldn't be as concerned about it. But again, trying to predict when things are going to go up or down, that's a tough one. Yeah.
What's going to happen with the renting rates?
Well, it appears, and we talked a little bit last podcast about the big investors, it appears that if fewer people, a lot more people can get into the market when their rate's at 3.5% or 3%. When it goes to 5 and you're on the border, you either have to buy less house or don't buy at all. So if that reduces that, people still need a place to live, so that means there's going to be more people renting. Home ownership had gotten pretty high, and now it's probably going to drop down because of the affordability between prices and interest rates. So it's going to be tougher to be a renter in terms of, rents will likely rise because the demand for housing is still there. Regardless of what people buy and sell houses for, the demand for a place to live is not going down.
When COVID first hit in March of 2020 and kids started going home from Cal Poly, I thought to myself, hey, this is going to impact the rental rates in San Luis Obispo, and it did, but not the way I thought. I think rental rates today are 20 to 25% higher than at the start of COVID. And I would have thought they would have gone the other way. So I'm as good at predicting the future as you are, Hal.
We're on the same boat. Yeah, it's just fascinating because there's just, San Luis Obispo, I used to say this a long time ago, is what, like a thinly traded stock, which means there's just not many shares. So we have this small housing market, and we have a lot of people competing for that small housing market. So it just makes it valuable. Aluminum used to be really expensive before they learned how to make it cheaply or whatever, but gold is more valuable than silver. So if I can go housing in San Luis Obispo, not room to build much, we don't have much more water, it's not going to expand out versus you go to Bakersfield and housing is easier to recreate. You just can't recreate it here, right? So
great point.
It's going to put that's what keeps it strong and from fluctuating much, which is the things people worry about. Again, you can control your rate. The house price you really can't, but the limited supply makes it a good place to be.
I think you just came up with a new slogan.
What's that?
San Luis Obispo County, the gold standard of real estate.
I thought you were going to say aluminum, but yeah.
I thought I was going to say the little slice. Get your slice. Right?
Yeah.
That's pizza.
No, that's pastrami, right?
okay.
Princess Bride, yeah, pastrami.
No, I think that's good. The gold standard of real estate. Way to go, Hal.
All right.
I mean, you think about it though. You guys talk about, like, we've been comparing over the last several podcasts the difference in the bubbles of 2008, 2009, 2010, all that, and what's happening today. You talk about this market and how did this market hold up against the valley markets in the big real estate crash of 2008? I mean, it held up here, right? And over there it was tough.
Oh, great question. Yeah. So we did not have the drops that they did. Now, there were drops, 20, 30%, and specific houses, like I gave an example a few podcasts ago about this folks that bought 2006 their house downtown on Sydney Street, 2-bedroom, 1-bath for like $560. Well, now it's going to sell for like $900,000. They bought it at the top of the market. Okay, so that aside, it didn't go down much for a couple of reasons. Very few people had to sell. Okay, that's one thing. Two, when the market goes down, there are still people that like to buy when the prices go down, when everybody else is afraid. So they would pick up any distressed properties, which we had very few. And three, rents were always very solid. Mm-hmm. The other thing is we don't have we don't have big industry here, so it's not like a factory shut down or something happened where everybody lost their job. So if you keep your house and you have a reasonable payment, you can rent it out, so you don't ever have to be in a position where you have to sell. And if you look at how homes have been purchased, how the loans have been underwritten, these are solid situations where it's highly unlikely we're going to get a lot of desperate people. So that bodes well for values being supported.
I just remember, thinking back to that time, people just by the hundreds walking away from their houses in the Stocktons and the Merceds of the world, where I mean, just walking away, just leaving a house and people coming in and squatting in it. I mean, it was chaos.
Yes.
That did not happen here. In fact, I mean, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but it was a small dip. I mean, it was like, I remember we contemplated, it was like, oh, prices go down, maybe we should jump in now. Should have. Looking back, you talk about your DeLorean, JT, but looking back, we should have jumped in the market then, but then it didn't. We had an 8-month window where we regretted it, and then after that we just continued on with renting until we were secure enough to buy.
That's interesting because in my business, right, so that was 2008, 9, 10, there were a lot of real estate brokers, and I networked throughout the country that were going to be what we call REO agents, which means you go to Bank of America and you want to be their preferred real estate agent because they get properties back through foreclosure. And so some of those agents were selling hundreds of REOs a year in Dallas, in Fresno, and all these places. Here, I was an REO accountant and I'd get 1 or 2 a year.
Wow.
Right? So, and there were a few of us, right? So, but it's still, the number of what we call bank-owned REOs, short sales, was so small compared to many other places, right? So specifically, this area holds its value even through the worst recession since 1930, whatever it was, the Great Depression. So I think, John, you had something to add.
To go back to James' question about rents. In 1977, I was in grad school here. We rented a 4-bedroom house for $600 a month. And in 2011, the first transaction I did with you, Hal, I bought a house pretty close to Cal Poly, 4-bedroom house. It rented for $3,750 the first year I owned it. I don't have that house any longer, but if I did today, it would rent for $6,000 for a 4-bedroom house. So you want to ask the question about rents? Rents are just like housing prices. They have gone up over time. And that would be another reason that you'd want to get in that DeLorean and go back in time to rent a place. So the moral of the story is buy a house as soon as you can.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about crystal ball. We talked about rent. I purchased the house I'm living in now in 2006. I've been in the real estate business since 2000, and I couldn't predict that would be the summer where everything peaked, and I paid way more than the house was worth, more than anybody had ever paid on the street. I was a complete idiot for buying this house at this elevated price, $585,000. It was the only house available in the school district I wanted my kids to go to school in. So we had no choice. 2 years later, the house was valued. I got it, my tax assessment. The value of the house was $383,000. Today, the house was just appraised at $857,000. So the crystal ball, I mean, I'll leave that to the Styx. Their all-time best song, Crystal Ball, right? Leave that with them. The reality is that you don't need one if you're going to buy and hold. You don't need a crystal ball.
You came up with another moral to the story. Even idiots can make money in real estate.
Thank you,
There you go.
Chief, for that vote of confidence.
And I didn't even know the Styx had that song.
So Hal, you said you had no idea what's going to happen in the third and fourth quarter, but everybody's talking about trends right now. Mm-hmm. All three of you are talking about trends. Mm-hmm. According to the trend, I know it's a short term. 6 months is short. What would you expect is going to happen in the next 6 months?
In what fashion? Are you talking prices? What are we talking about?
Prices.
I would say they're likely going to be maybe. I mean, the experts are predicting a 6 or 7% increase. So my perspective, just being here, is wow, we've had a big drop in demand, but we haven't seen a really big drop in supply. Or in pricing by any means. Could have been a little bit. But I would say flat to maybe slightly increasing, but who knows? I mean, I'm a very conservative person. I never would have said, oh yeah, that house will be worth 20% more in 5 years. But they are. I mean, I just get surprised all the time because I'm old school, kind of like I don't live beyond my means by any means, and I look at these prices and go, wow, it's crazy where we are at. I would say this: if the market goes up or down, I don't think you should buy a house with the plan to sell it in a year. If you do, good for you. If you're going to speculate. If that's your job and you're a professional, great. But if you're going to buy a house and just plan on being in it for a year, don't buy a house. It's not worth it. But if you want a place to live for the long term and you like living here and you want to have a piece of real estate for the long term, think down the road. And now it's easy for me to say because I'm pushing 60. So I've seen the value of time and how that works. But when you're 20 or 25 or 30, it's hard to see past that. You got to think long term.
The amount of available homes for sale, you think is going to keep rising?
Oh, the active inventory? It's bound to go up.
James, let's talk about, inventory by the numbers. Inventory at its lowest point was somewhere, don't quote me exactly, around 200 properties in the county. It's up just right close to 300 today. So we're saying inventory's up. But to bring that into perspective, in 2011, I think it was, as Hal said in a previous podcast, it was about just under 1,200 houses on the market. And there was a time that I remember in the mid-'90s, and don't quote me on this, I think it was closer to 2,000 houses on the market in this county. So we got 300 houses. That's still not a lot of inventory. And as the industry experts that I've listened to recently have said, that in order to get to normal inventory is not going to take a matter of months. It's going to take a matter of years.
What's the number that's normal? What would you say the number for San Luis Obispo County? Say, once we hit that number, we're normal. 600, 1,000, 10,000?
Well, there's all sorts of definitions, and there's no normal. But there's sellers markets and buyers market. And I think a balanced market has been quoted as like average days on the market is 90 days.
I think a buyer's market is inventory that's on the market for 6 months or more, which I have never seen in our area. So a balanced market, I think you're right, also right in that 3-month mark.
90 days, which would seem like an eternity now. Because we're coming off 6 days, 10. I mean, I show people the comps, and I just have this little list, and days on the market, they're single digits. I mean, come on, that's never, ever happened. Right? People take longer to buy a car than 6 days.
And that's an average.
Yeah. So there is no normal, but I would say we always look at how many properties are going off the market, okay, and how many properties are coming on the market. That's what we look at. So it's months, days, weeks supply of homes. So right now we've gone from on average 7 to 10 days worth of supply in any given price range if you're in a neighborhood to might be 3 to 4 weeks now. So it's still like a third of what's even normal.
But still a buyer's market. I mean, a seller's market. Excuse me. Yeah, it's still a seller's market. Yeah.
Trust me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since we're all in the real estate industry, and if I meet somebody I don't know and they find out that I'm working with Hal, they always ask me, well, tell me about the real estate market. And one of the real estate experts that I subscribe to, I heard him say in the last couple of weeks that there are 2 markets in real estate. One is pricing, and the other is the number of properties that are transacting. So when you think about the market today, as you said a few weeks ago, Jay, last year we had a record number of transactions. So you wouldn't say the market is soft on transactions, would you?
No, not at all.
I wouldn't say there's a bubble on transactions.
Well, there might be 300 properties on the market for sale, but they're all going to close in 10 days. So you've got 3 cycles within a month, right? So there's 900 properties. The traditional market is 1,150 properties. So we're transacting an average amount of homes. There's just no inventory on the market at the time people are looking. And that's what makes them feel like, well, there's nothing happening. It's just happening so fast, you're missing it.
Yeah, we had a record year last year. We're going to be down a little bit this year, and the predictions are this is going to be the 3rd biggest transaction year in the history of the real estate market.
Yeah, I think those 27% annual year-over-year increases are definitely going to I think it'll slow down in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I'm with Hal. I think that 7 to 10% appreciation across the county, because some areas are appreciating at a much faster rate. I think when I pulled the numbers yesterday, like the South County was at a stable 7%, but San Luis was at 27% with a median price of $1.12 million. I mean, holy smokes! Paso Robles has had huge gains as well, but the Scenic Coast is got a moderate gain, like 12%, because they had already been so elevated. They only have a few properties that sell out there every month anyway, so one big property can skew the numbers. So you have to really take the mean median as opposed to the real.
So when did the decrease in available listed homes start? So like you said, in 2012 there was 1,200 in SLO County. When did the decrease start?
In May of 2020, just after COVID had hit. This is my memory working here. I think it's good. I remember seeing 800 plus homes on the market in San Luis Obispo County.
So 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago we were at 800, and 2 months ago we were at 200.
Yeah, and it fluctuates so quickly. I mean, you go back to 2018, 2019, those years where the first quarter everything went great, and then by May it was a completely different market. And that was out. There was no COVID. There was no big bumps in rates. Just people need a breather sometimes, right? And like certain homes I see in certain communities, it's like, well, they got to this huge level, and then they're kind of stuck there, and it takes a while for the buying public to either adjust to it, or the sellers have to adjust to it. So the sellers have to go, well, let's be patient and see if the next buyer comes around and go, no, I want to hurry it up, so I'm willing to go a little bit lower. And the good news is for most people, if they got less than they thought their neighbors did or they should, they're still making massive gains, right? I try to put it in perspective for property owners. You paid $580 for the house, you put $200 into it, that's $780. Okay. Now you've paid down some principal, you've got tax write-offs, you got all that, but regardless of any of that, now you're going to sell it for $1.2 million instead of $1.25 million. How many other things could you have done and done that well? Right? And then, if John would drive this home, he'd go, $580, how much did you put down? So maybe you put down $200,000, right? So $580 minus $1.2 million is what? No, excuse me, $780. So it's $800. That's about $400,000, right, in gain. Right. But you put up $200 to make $400. What kind of return is that? It's better than 1%. I know that. I don't know what that number is, but that's a good return.
So the question, if I recall, is about the 3rd and 4th quarter, right?
Yes.
And how there are other real estate markets in the country where seasonality is a big deal because of the extreme weather that they have in other parts of the country. Here we have the greatest weather in the world. Do we have seasonality here?
That seems to have gone away. The days when we're going to move in May or June because the kids are out of school. We used to definitely see a lull in the number of homes available during the holiday season, October, November, December, and the number of sales. But in 2019, 20, and 21, Decembers were like crazy. So it's not so much the time of the year that determines the market, it's what's happening in the market. I would jokingly say to people, that remember 2006, it didn't matter what time of year you sold your house, you had a great price. And in 2009, it didn't matter what time of year you sold your house, you didn't get a very good price. We don't have as much seasonality. It's more what's happening in the whole market, both locally and nationally.
Any other crystal ball on third and fourth quarter?
I'm going to say this. This is June, right, 2022. So in the fourth quarter, we'll have to look back and see what we came out of our mouths and see how close we were. Okay, so we'll put that on our November podcast.
Whatever we said, do the opposite.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I'm going to practice on being ambiguous going forward.
Yes. All right, gentlemen, as always, it was a pleasure. Great job. Thank you very much. And we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the How Sweasey podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. It comes out every Monday, so check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The SLO County Real Estate with How Sweasey podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on howsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. halsweasey.com. That's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the House Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
House Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 01111-911. The SLO County Real Estate with House Sweasey podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.